Hey everybody, I am at my day job working with those babies that I love. Um, anyway, this week I wanted to make just kind of like some quick tips and just kind of walk you through this assignment because I know it seems a little bit crazy. I'm sure a lot of you have been doing lots of reading, and hopefully you're reading what I'm providing for you and watching the videos, because those Chapter 2 videos or Unit 2 videos are really, really important. So you might need to watch them again. You might need to watch, pause, then experiment with it. Okay, so that's what I do. And Google's your best friend, or your web browser. You can ask it anything. So how do I do this with my my Nikon D610? It's something I ask, and then comes right up. So if you're lucky enough to have one of those popular camera models, that'll help you. And also looking through your camera manual, if you have now saved it to your computer. If you do, let's see, it's Control F or Command F. And that's the finder. So if in a document you can find anything that you're looking for very quickly. So when you do that Control F or Command F, a little window is going to pop up, and you could just write in, shutter speed. You could write in depth of field. So these are the things that, you're going to want to look into this week. You're going to look into your manual settings on your camera, and, it's a lot. But your manual will be so helpful for you. Just, do a quick search, and, you don't have to read every page because, wow, it's a lot. Okay, so you're going to, in the discussion board, you're going to share your camera model again. Make sure you're looking back to that instructor video, right, in Unit 2 about manual functions and creating raw files, because those are the two things you need to do this week. And then I put in some articles for you about f-stops and depth of field. So that all has to do with your aperture setting, and that is the little window behind the camera. And you can go to a, let's see, a smaller aperture. Smaller aperture is going to allow clarity into the distance. Larger aperture is going to focus on what's right in front of you. And then if you use your autofocus on your camera, that's so helpful. Otherwise, you're experimenting with the dial and telling the camera where you want it to focus if you're doing manual. And that's full manual. Okay, so that's depth of field. Now, shutter speed. Make sure you read the article that I posted in the assignment for this week for Unit 4. And it's pretty simple. So what you've got here is you've got the window, which is the aperture, right? And the window is going to be either big, which is shallow depth of field, also lots of light. So if it's too big, you might need to go to your second setting, which is shutter speed, and make it a little faster. So if it's a little faster, it's going to cut down on how long that window is open. Because these shutters are like going crazy around here behind the lens, and they kind of wind together these little panels. So it's all about light. Photography is all about light. Okay, now a deep depth of field, really huge depth of field, means you're looking far into the distance and everything's clear. So for that, you're going to need a smaller aperture. It's kind of like, think about squinting your eyes. If you make that, sometimes if you make that, you squint a little bit and make it smaller, then you can see it a little more clear. So that's what your camera's doing. The smaller aperture, which is a larger number, by the way. Weird. It's just opposite. I don't know who came up with these F numbers, but it's math. So I just go, no. I know that a larger size is a smaller F number. A smaller size is a larger F number. Okay, and that's all you really need to know. So if you're trying to capture that deep depth of field, now you've got a teeny tiny little window. Look how small it is. It's squinting. And so now you need to slow down your shutter speed to let more time for the shutters to stay open and let more light into your camera. Okay, so that's basically aperture and shutter speed in a nutshell. Okay, so make sure you're reading all these things because you have to have one image that shows depth of field. So whether it's shallow depth of field with a really, really tight focus on one thing and then the background's blurred, or all the way in the opposite direction, you can see far, far into the distance. You used a smaller aperture, larger F number, and a slower shutter speed to let more light. Okay, and then shutter speed, I would recommend shooting a moving subject for shutter speed. So I'm sure we all have something in our life that's moving, whether it's your pets or your kids, or you have to go out to the highway or the road and see a car passing. So something like that. And then experiment with different shutter speed settings. And you'll see that you're either going to get a frozen moment, which is a really fast shutter speed. In that case, you'd have to open the aperture larger, right? Okay, or a really slow shutter speed, which it's the little shutters are open so long that all of this time passes and lets in tons of light. So, you know, you have to do both settings. All right, now, light meter reading. If you have a button on your camera that looks like a little plus minus, that's exposure. So if you +1, it's going to be a little bit larger aperture, a little bit slower shutter speed. -1 is going to be the opposite. Okay, so you can use that button. I would go like make it really obvious that you have one picture that is in focus, nice and clear. You could do that with automatic. And then the next picture of the same subject, take one that's too dark. Take one that's too bright. Okay, so that's your your 3 images. One that's in focus, perfect light exposure. One that has too much light, one that has too little light. Okay, so that's all you do for light meter. And you're going to post those 3 images. I want you to have at least one raw file to turn into submissions. Okay, now here's my bonus tips. Whenever I'm taking a picture, I want it to be really good, and I want it like an instantly no. Like, because you could like calculate in your brain 5 minutes have passed and you've lost the shot. So what I do is I'll set the camera to auto, and I will focus the camera by pressing that shutter release halfway and take a picture. See what your camera thinks is a good light aperture setting. What is a good shutter speed setting? Remember that ISO is set it to 100 and forget it. Don't turn it on auto for ISO. That will screw you up every time. It'll just, it'll all become like pixelated and awful. And some people don't notice that, but believe me, it's true. Okay, so I said, look at your settings from that picture. If you can show in your information, whether that's in your settings or your menu on your camera, you have to find out, what did the camera choose for the aperture? What is the F number that you see? Write that down. What did the camera use for shutter speed? Write that down. Okay, so now these are the settings that the camera is telling you are appropriate for that lighting situation and that subject. Okay, that's very helpful because that gives you a starting place. Now you can set to your A, which is your aperture mode on your dial, and you can experiment with just changing the size of the aperture. What if you make it a little bigger? How does the subject look different? What if you make it a little smaller? How does the subject look different? Write this down. It's going to be so helpful to you in the future. Okay, now turn it to S, and this is shutter priority. So now the camera is going to tell you shutter priority or time value, TV or S, is going to decide what your shutter speed should be. No, I'm saying that backwards. This gives you a chance to set the shutter. Okay, so the camera in that case chooses the aperture or the F number. So look at what your starting place was from your auto shot and see what happens when you make the shutter speed a little faster, a little slower, and mark down what those differences are. This is also light meter readings, so the two are kind of like interchangeable. And then try full manual. Okay, you've got a starting place. You have an idea of what's going to happen with a certain aperture, what's going to happen with a certain shutter speed, and it's all about balancing that out and getting exactly what you want out of the picture. Okay? I'm going to stop talking because I tend to overtalk and overthink and explain too much. But I really, really hope that this helps you this week, and please just get in touch with me. We can walk through it over the phone. We can do Zoom or FaceTime or Duo, whatever you have. We can also text back and forth, whatever you prefer. And please tell me if you need help, because that's what I'm here for. Okay, bye-bye.